and welcome to Real Talk, where every Sunday night we offer insight, education, and resources to in-home caregivers and those affected in their world. These are the children, the parents, the extended family, and everyone who loves them. And our goal is to offer real-life topics and learning through discussing real issues and offering real solutions. And tonight, I'm excited to welcome a guest that we've been wanting to get on here for a while, but life and schedules make that challenging sometimes. So first off, before I introduce her, I want to say welcome to Stephanie Hudgens. It's great to have you tonight. So,
great to be here.
Absolutely. Stephanie is a parent coach, a newborn and infant specialist, a lactation counselor, and a public speaker. Her background spans a wide range and depth of knowledge in the fields of childcare and child development. She holds numerous credentials and qualifications, including being an INA credentialed nanny and newborn care specialist. You were one of the first, weren't you?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. She has also holds certification through CASH and advanced certification through the Newborn Care Specialist Association, and is a master newborn care specialist through Newborn Care Solutions. So she's done the hard work. Overall, Stephanie has more than 40 years of experience as a caregiver for infants and children. Additionally, because apparently all that was not enough, Stephanie also is a certified lactation consultant, a holistic sleep coach, a certified Montessori practitioner, and holds an endorsement in infant mental health as an infant family associate. She's a member of the NCSA Board of Directors and serves as chair of their Continuing Education Committee. Stephanie also volunteered as a speaking ambassador for the 2020 moms, educating others about perinatal mood disorders as a warm line support staff and support coordinator with a specialized focus on supporting parents needing help with colic and fussy babies with Postpartum Support International, and as an accredited lactation counselor with Breastfeeding USA. She is also the mother of 2 boys and brings her deep familiarity with the parent side of the child development experience to everything that she does. And I can tell you personally that I have found Stephanie to be an absolutely fantastic resource. Many of the things listed in here, she has taught me about, and I've had the opportunity to learn because of that. So I'm really excited to have you on tonight, Stephanie, and to kind of dig into some of your knowledge around basically all of these things. We're going to get into that. But what I would love to do before we jump into that is give us a fun fact. Tell us something, because all this is credentials and experience and stuff. Give us a fun fact or something that our audience can go, hey, that's kind of cool. I like that about Stephanie. Or share something to share Stephanie with us.
Oh, gosh, that's that's hard to think about at the last minute. Fun fact. I don't have any fun facts.
I have one. We can tell them that those gorgeous curls that they see on the screen are the real deal. I know everybody comments on your hair.
Yes, okay, so that's a fun fact. My hair was the bane of my existence for decades until the person who cuts my hair finally told me to stop coloring it and just let it be natural. And darned if that didn't end up being great hair. So if only I could go back and stop messing with my hair all those decades to where it looked terrible, then yeah, that would be great. So yes, I don't do much to it at all.
Right? So there's the fun fact. That's the real deal.
Fun fact.
And I know people comment on all the time. I know I'm one of them. Because I joke that if I could go gray that well, I would be gray right now. Absolutely.
I know.
And I know there's lots of other fun and cool things for people to get to know you over time. But I want to really dig in tonight because the topic we're going to discuss, so you've written up a blog for us on this also, and it's one that people ask about a lot. I know that people are always asking you about classes, about continuing education. When they ask me or they have questions, I oftentimes tag you and let you answer because, frankly, you've taken more classes than probably anybody I know. And that,
a lot.
Yeah, exactly. But it gives you a really good basis to speak to that, which is why I really wanted to have you talk about this. So Let's talk a little bit about this because a lot of people don't even understand exactly kind of what continuing education is or why it's important. So let's start with what is it? What is continuing education, especially directly as a newborn care specialist or a nanny?
Yeah, so continuing education is really anything that adds to your base of knowledge, which it can help in two different ways. Number one, it adds something that you don't already know. So you've branched out into an area where, maybe you haven't worked with older infants before. So this is information on, development of the older infant. Or it adds to your base of knowledge in that it allows you to take the experience that you've already had. Then you take a class, and through that class, you look back on your experience and you're like, oh, so that's why this was happening, or that's why we had this issue. I think a lot of us see this. It happens in any career, but particularly in this one where we tend to be more isolated. We're not working with a group of people, so we can't share our experiences with other, teachers or other preschool teachers. So we take a class, like say we take a foundational class, and then we go get a job. And you're scared, you feel like you don't know a lot, even though you took the class. When you take that job and you work, you're learning through experience on the job. But then when you take additional classes, you get to take that higher level of knowledge and add it to your experience. And it really changes how you practice and the depth of your knowledge, even more so than just taking a lot of classes. It's that combination of experience and additional classes. So continuing education is generally in most professions is additional classes or additional training that you take while and after you've had experience in the job, which is why they call it continuing education. One of the things I like to share with people is I have been doing this job. I started off doing as a baby nurse when I was in high school. It just kind of happened that I was really good with infants, and parents were desperate, and they'd be like, oh, is there any way that you could just do like some overnights? And so I fell into this. I didn't know that this was a thing or anything. But the way that I practiced in, I'm going to age myself, in 1980 is considerably different than what I do now. A lot of that is based on the additional knowledge that I've gained over the years. There are a lot of things that were best practices back then that are not best practices now. We did not put children to sleep on their back, and we did not swaddle them. Children slept on their stomachs with bumper pads and on lambskins with lots of stuffed animals. And of course, we don't do that anymore, and there are reasons for that. And there are still people that have not done any type of continuing education, and you'll hear them. They'll say, well, you know what, that's what I did 40 years ago, and it worked great, and I still do it today. And this is why we want to take the continuing education. It's one of the reasons is we want to update our best practices. We've learned a lot. Medical, science has learned a lot. Psychology has learned a lot. We know so much more now than we did even 10 years ago that we want to incorporate those best practices into our practice to make us the best that we can be.
Mm-hmm. So if I'm hearing you right, because I hear this objection a lot to training, even somebody who is significantly experienced, who's been in this field for 15, 20, 25, 30 years, still can benefit from continuing education because there's new things to learn.
Absolutely. There's no question about it. I think that the objections that we get a lot of times is that this continuing education in their mind is like, say, is like taking another foundational course. That isn't. Continuing education is different for each person because it depends on where you are in your journey and your interests. But at my point in my career, the continuing education that I take is often very specialized. Mm-hmm. So like I have an endorsement in infant mental health, and I have taken a number of training classes in infant mental health specifically meant for preemies and newborns. So those are classes where I'm generally in the same classroom with NICU nurses and with people who do OT and PT with preemie babies. And I'm taking those classes. It's very specific information that you're not going to get in a typical newborn care class. But that's because I've taken all the other classes, and I now need some more specialized, at my level. If you don't have lactation, if you don't have infant mental health, if you don't have sleep, if you don't have behavior, I took a really great class that has to do with all of the medical stuff that happens in the first 3 days, all the tests that they do, what does it mean on the bilirubin, and all very detailed. And of course, I'm not evaluating bilirubin levels on newborns, but what you still learn stuff, and you can still take that and apply that to your job. And then when parents mention something, I can be like, oh yes, that's a typical test. Or like one of the things we learned is that it's quite common to get a false positive on those blood tests that they take in the hospital, that they're evaluating babies for all of these horrible diseases. And that's because the tests are designed to capture 100% of the kids that have these deadly diseases. But because of that, they have a very high rate of false positives. But it's better to say we might have a problem than to not see the problem and have a baby die. So they're designed that way. So it's helpful to be able to tell parents, just because it comes out positive, they may not be positive at all. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't taken the class. So these are the reasons why, even with a lot of experience, medium experience and new experience, continuing education is just really important.
Mm-hmm. I love that you brought it up that way, because obviously we all know that we're not, as newborn care specialists and nannies, we're not operating as a medical practitioner, but yes, there's a lot of value in having that medical knowledge, because when we know about it and we say, oh yes, that's a fairly common test, or that's a fairly common thing, exactly, that statement in and of itself helps a parent relax a little bit. It makes them feel not quite so alone. And, oh, wait a minute, if I do have to face this monster, there's somebody here who can support me, who knows what's going on. So there's a lot of ways that it provides a little bit of confidence and maybe helps them calm down just a little bit over what could potentially be nothing anyway. But I love that you brought that up. So if somebody's watching this and they say, okay, I never thought about it that way, or I'm new to this, what do I need to do now? How do they determine what subject they should look at, or what classes they should consider?
Yeah,
if they're doing that.
So I talk to a lot of people, I mentor a lot of people one-on-one to help them try to navigate exactly this. And this is what I tell people. The first thing you've got to identify is you need to take a look at your resume. Sit down with your resume. Where are your holes? Where do you lack knowledge? Even though you don't have a twin job coming up, so you don't really need to know about twins, because the next job isn't with twins. There's a hole in your knowledge. Do you have the lactation knowledge? Where is it that are your holes, and which holes are most obvious? Like you're in a job and you're like, oh, I'm really challenged. I can't get the baby to sleep. Maybe the baby has trouble feeding. And so I lack knowledge in, say, like a feeding aversion or something. So where are your holes that you know about, and where are your holes that are potential based on your resume? And what's the purpose of the training? Because I tell people the purpose is not always to add knowledge. I wrote down notes so I wouldn't forget. Sometimes I do continuing education for networking purposes. I'm booked out years in advance. I have people that schedule their IVFs around my schedule. But a lot of these jobs have come through networking, which either starts or is supported through the continuing education that I do. People that I meet, they see me, that we talk, we chat, and I get jobs that way. So continuing education to me is really important as far as networking as well. So you identify what you're missing, you identify the point to it. So if I'm going to go to a class for networking possibilities, I don't worry so much about what the subject is. I know that I've taken 100 sleep courses, but this is a great networking opportunity, so I'm going to take another one. And you always learn something. You always learn something, no matter every class. There is always some tidbit of information that you're going to learn. So you identify why you're doing it, where your hole of knowledge, and then you have to figure out, does this class fit with my philosophy of practice? And does this class match what my target audience is looking for? And it's okay if it doesn't, but these are just some of the parameters. Does it fit my budget? And do I have the time to do it? So you have to kind of take a lot of these things. So, if I decide I want to do a sleep course, I've got to determine what my budget is, what kind of time I've got. But then let's just say, and everybody's different in how we practice. Some of us are much more on the crunchy side. Some of us are much more on the very strict Western medicine. Some of us are much more, we don't sleep train infants, because infants, you can't sleep train under 4 months. But some of us are much more rigid in how we practice, and that is how we choose to practice. is that we have a particular method that we use every time. Others of us are much more flexible, and that's okay. That's what makes the world go round, is that there are different options, and different parents like different things. So there's no one particular right way to do it. But when you're taking this class, does it match? Does it bring in what you need? Like, I might not be interested in taking a class on using essential oils with babies because that's not something I would ever do. Somebody else and their clientele might be very interested in it. Or I might take that class. I might not put it on my resume because it doesn't appeal to my target audience, but I might just want the information on it. So there's a lot of different pieces to look at. Right now with the pandemic, and how limited in-person classes are, and how many virtual classes there are, you really have to kind of narrow it down, or you'll end up signing yourself up for 1 million virtual classes and never complete anything.
Right.
Is what happens.
Absolutely. And I love the fact that you brought up that sometimes, even if it's something you're really knowledgeable about, you might learn a little tidbit. And I'm fond of saying sometimes the only thing you learn is that you really don't agree with that approach, but now you have a stronger foundation for whatever it is, right? So there's always something to learn. And yes, we all have to be realistic about our budgets, but at the end of the day, ongoing education, continuing education is an investment in yourself, in your career, and in your future. So I don't feel like it's ever wasted, even if the only thing you learn is, I think that instructor is absolutely off the wall and it's not my thing. Like, if essential oils is not your thing, or if it really is your thing, you'll learn those kind of things. And I know a few years ago, I took a class for that very reason, thinking this is the craziest thing I have ever heard of. But I'm at a conference, this class is being offered, and I had planned to sit by the pool and it was raining. And I was like, well, I might as well go to this class, even though I think this is ridiculous. And it was a class on going green. And I learned so much, and it totally changed my perspective on that entire topic. So sometimes we get a whole paradigm shift around that, which can be amazing too.
Not only that, but you can take a class, like, let's say I decide to take a class in essential oils. It may be that doesn't change. I may not, after taking the class, decide I want to do it, but they may talk about something else there, some other class or some other practice or some other course or some other person that I connect with. And then now I found like the best class in infant massage, which I am interested in. And so all of these things, because our community is fairly small. I mean, it isn't just newborn care specialists. I interact with a lot of NICU nurses and PT and OT, but in reality, it's a fairly small, for newborn care specialists, it's a fairly limited circle of what our continuing education is. There's just only so many topics because we're talking about just this basic 3 to 4 month span of children. So all of these people have done other things, have taken other classes, met other people. And so that's why you're just always learning. It's really, and it is, you mentioned the budget. I always tell people, look at your budget, because you don't want to get yourself to the point where you've only paid for half of it and you can't pay for the other half of the class. But I have spent many thousands of dollars on continuing education over the years and never felt that it was wasted, ever. And it definitely has paid off. That throughout the years, I have always done continuing education. And there's a variety. Some are expensive, some are not as expensive as you think. You can also read books, podcasts, that type of thing. But they always add, and my income continues to go up as I add more and more knowledge to my base.
Yep, absolutely. And that's a great point too, is that as long as you do this well and then know how to communicate effectively around it, it absolutely can raise your wages over time. Absolutely. What about looking at, does the class offer some kind of certification or credential? Is that an important thing to consider? Is that any kind of factor that someone should look at?
I do find, because parents and agencies like to see certifications and credentials. So whether they're legitimate or not, and that's like a whole nother real talk, but They do like that. So it is a question to ask, is do you offer a certification or a credential or a completion? It's not as important to me because what I would do is if I'm wanting to be, say, I have like a certification in Montessori. And so what I did is I decided I wanted that. And then I looked at what my options were rather than I'm just taking a random class and do you offer that? So I tell people, if you're looking for a certification, you want to become certified in lactation and sleep or whatever, you need to identify all of the different classes, what they offer, what it takes to get them. And is that something that can you fulfill the requirements? And they're all over the board. For the most part, our industry is unregulated. It doesn't matter whether we're talking about newborn care specialist or nanny or sleep or infant massage or lactation. These are all fairly unregulated. So there's a million options because people create a class and then make up a certification. So it really depends on what you're looking for. So if you're looking, say, for some type of lactation credential. So the top lactation credential is International Board Certified Lactation Consultant. That requires over 1,000 hours of supervised practice, as well as college credits and 90 hours. Most of us are not going to try for that because the investment of that in time and money is not doable while working this job. So then you have to look at what the other credentials are. And there are a number of them. I'm a certified lactation counselor. There's certified breastfeeding educator, certified lactation educator. There's a lot of them, a lot of alphabet soup. So then you have to try to think, well, is there a particular one that sounds better on my resume or that is more requested, is offered in my area? I've heard that the class is better. So this is, it isn't just about the credential, but I don't think you'd want to take, because people are looking for credentials in breastfeeding, you wouldn't want to take your neighbor Mary's come over to my house and we'll chit chat about breastfeeding class and pay her money for that. Because there are good, legitimate, vetted courses out there that will give you, while not regulated, at least a recognized credential in our industry. So for a lot of those, me personally, I have found the credentials that I have, and I have a lot more credentials than what we listed because I do all kinds of little things. It does make a difference. My clients hire me because of my credentials, because of those certifications, and I have them listed on my resume, and my clients mention that. And the agencies notice it and refer me because of them. So, even though we're an unregulated industry, but I do try to vet the courses. I will always ask people's experience in those courses. I find out what the qualifications of the instructor are, how long they've been doing it, because there's a lot of courses out there where, like, literally people will take a course and be like, oh, this is interesting, I should put my own course out. And then they put out their own course. And I'm like, you don't even know, you just took a course and now you're going to teach the course. So yeah. No.
Yeah. And that was one of the things I was going to ask you is, so say, let's take lactation, because that was the thing you brought up last. If I say to you, hey, Stephanie, I'm thinking about taking lactation, and I've looked at this, and I know that really what I want to do is I just want to educate people. I don't want to do anything hands-on. So how do I figure out, knowing that an IBCLC is not really where I need to go?
Right.
How do I figure out which class is best for me? Like, is there some place where I can find reviews, or how do I get information?
It's hard. Because the best thing to do is go on your Facebook group and then Google lactation class, because that question has been asked 10 trillion times. You don't need to ask it again. The challenge with that is that the people that are telling you, oh, this was the best course, didn't take 5 lactation courses. They just took that one course. And I'm no different. I took through the Healthy Baby organization, or whatever, whichever one does the certified lactation counselor. I took that one specifically because that is a hands-on class. You're meant to do one-on-one consultations as opposed to educating. So that was what I was looking for. But I did do some research and I did find a lot of reviews. You'll see the same reviews coming up again and again and again for certain places and certain people. And then the next thing I would do once I've kind of narrowed it down is I would check to see the method of delivery. Is it online? Is it hands-on? Is it once a week for 6 weeks? Is it all day for 2 days? What's the method of delivery? And does that fit how I learn? Like I don't do well in online classes that are, at your own pace because I'll never do them. I need to actually commit to sitting in front of something live, but other people are completely different. And is it something I can listen to? Does it have homework? Some people are great at reading and other people don't want to have anything to do with reading. They don't want to have to read, research. Does the time work for me? What's the cost of it? And what's the reputation of the class? What's the curriculum? And there's any legitimate course out there can send you an overview of an outline of what the curriculum, what did they cover? And then I ask people specific questions because I know other people will take a class and they'll love that class and I'll go to that class and I'll be, that was the worst class I've ever been to because we are expecting different things. And so I'll ask very pointed questions of people that I know I can trust and just say, so in the class, what did you guys do? And if they said, oh, it was great because, we like shared a bunch of knowledge, like we had fun. We played this game where we had like these flashcards and we all had to try to guess. And then we split up into small groups and we pretended that we were this or whatever. That generally doesn't, my personal way of learning, that doesn't usually work well for me just because I don't feel like I'm getting enough information. Like I like research and facts and more of a lecture base with a little bit of interaction. But lots of people don't learn that way. So you want to ask some particular questions about how you learn and what information you're looking for. I know when we were talking about, because I had a friend that took a different lactation course the same weekend I took mine. And she said hers was horrible. And we asked some different questions, and it was much more of a social networking, not a lot of facts. The one I took is 40 hours long, and it's lecture pretty much the whole time. So different. So that's kind of how you can evaluate. But you will find when it comes to most of these big topics, sleep, lactation, newborn care, that generally you're going to have certain ones that people recommend again and again and again. Those are the ones you want to look into and research. If somebody recommends some random one that no one's ever heard about, that always makes me question. Because to be honest, people, and you know this, people are doing this to make money. People are not offering you these classes because they're, they want to help you out in your career. I mean, that's part of it. But in reality, these are businesses. And so somebody is like, oh my gosh, all these newborn care specialists make all this money. I can make money by selling them some course. And then they come up with some course, because now you can do it so easily. They've got somebody on their Facebook group that's their business coach that says, oh, all you need to do is do this, throw a course together, say the same thing, steal somebody else's outline and then just do another course on it all the time. So, so these random courses that pop up make me question. Not that some of those aren't completely legitimate, but find out what the person's background is, what their experience is, where are they coming from. I always wonder when I see courses that are newborn care specialist courses and they're taught by people who have been practicing for 6 months. I'm like, really? Sure.
The ones that blow my mind are the ones that are 6 hours long. And
yes, I was going to say the number of hours make a difference, or the ones where you look at the curriculum and this is for newborn care specialists and it's say 20 hours long and it includes 2 hours of water safety. Okay. Here's the thing. We generally don't take newborns swimming. And so, I mean, water skills is generally not something that's top on my list for newborn care.
Yeah.
So,
the other one that gets me is when they say it's a course and it's 20 hours and I know what it takes to put together a 20-hour course and they have like 300 topics and it's like so you didn't actually cover anything, you just mentioned it.
Yes.
Because there's no way you can cover it in that time frame.
Yes.
And so it has to be realistic, in terms of the time frame for what's covered, both from the perspective of 2 hours on water safety is ridiculous for a newborn care specialist. So is 300 topics in 20 hours.
Yes.
It goes on both sides.
Or 15 minutes on sleep conditioning in a newborn, need a little bit more time on that. So
yeah, exactly.
So yeah.
Definitely so much to think about. We're almost out of time already, surprisingly. And you and I both know that the two of us could sit and talk for hours.
I know.
But we're both very, very busy. Before we wrap up, anything final, anything else that you want to make sure that you really touch on during this time while we have a captive audience?
I know. I was looking at my notes. I think that, I think we've covered a lot. I think the thing that I would like people to think about is definitely do continuing education, even if it's just as much as reading a book or something.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have time for a class or whatever, realize that continuing education isn't just about adding to your knowledge base. It's also about incorporating that knowledge into your experiences and bringing it forward to improve your practice, and also networking. I am telling you, these classes are where you network, and it is important. It might not make a difference now, but 2 years later, literally I'll get a phone call and it'll be somebody that I was in a class with. So it's really important to continue to improve it. The other thing is you need to be open to listening to what you're learning in the continuing education and deciding what parts of that you want to incorporate. Because like you said, we're all going to grow, or we all should be growing in our practice. What I do now is different than what I did 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And that does make a difference. Your practice continues to improve with this. And don't be afraid to go outside of the newborn care specialist box. There's lots of courses out there that are that you're going to learn and be able to apply to this. Mm-hmm. And lots and lots and lots of courses that if you Google newborn care specialist training are never going to come up, because these people, these NICU nurses or PT or OT or whatever, they don't even know we exist half the time. Mm-hmm. So they're not marketing to us. And yet these courses are great for us. Mm-hmm. So lots of stuff out there. I know in the blog, I think I mentioned a ton of courses.
Right.
Like for instance, I often recommend this Montessori course that I took. I've taken a number of them, but I took a course called KHT Montessori, Karen Hansen Training Montessori. She's a well-respected Montessorian. She wanted to get Montessori out in the hands of more people, particularly people that like doing home daycare that don't really know what they're doing. The course costs like $350. It's very in-depth. You do the work, you do the reading, and then she walks you through and do the discussion. And it is aimed at primary, ages 3 to 6. But because you're learning the philosophy of it, I apply that all the time working with newborns. And parents want you to have, lots of parents want you to have a Montessori background, even though they don't even know what it means.
Yeah.
So, you've got the credential, you check the box, you look good on the resume. I learned a ton of stuff about the philosophy of Montessori. It didn't cost me that much money, even though the qualification isn't for newborns. I use it all the time. So that's just an example.
Yep. No, there's so much out there to learn. And I'm pretty well known in the industry for saying the day you think you know it all, the day you are finished learning is the day you should retire.
Yes.
And I'm always investing in continuing education. I was actually looking at 2 classes this morning that I'm considering. And I love doing it. I love continuing to learn. A, because I'm kind of a geek, but B, it allows me to continually bring more and new information to our students. And by extension, I ultimately touch my why, because the families and the babies have always been my why for being in this business. You're right. At the end of the day, I do have to pay my bills. And so I do need to make money.
We all do.
Just like everybody else does. But my why has always been serving families and babies. And so I love being able to bring new and interesting stuff that ultimately benefits them. And as you said, we also had you write a blog on this, and you shared lots of specifics in the blog. So there's a lot of information in the blog for people to check out. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your information tonight on Real Talk, Stephanie. As always, it's fabulous to talk to you, and it's been an honor to learn from you. So thank you so much.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been great. Lots of fun.
Absolutely. So if you have any questions around this topic or anything related to continuing education for newborn care specialists, put them in the feed and tag Stephanie or tag Newborn Care Solutions, and we'll make sure you get an answer. And be sure that you check out the blog that's also being released in conjunction with this, because there's different information in there. And there's lots of classes listed by name that Stephanie recommends. If you're wanting to rewatch this segment or catch any of our past Real Talk episodes, you can access those along with all of our other content by popping over to newborncaresolutions.com and clicking on the Education tab, or catching any of our past Real Talks on our YouTube channel. You simply put Newborn Care Solutions Real Talk into the search function, and they all come up for you. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a great night. Good night.